Welcome back, everyone, to my round 5 recap from the St. Louis Masters. I just had a super interesting game against Grandmaster Emilio Cordova, and something really funny happened in the opening, which I don't think he was aware of, but I was very well aware of. So the game started with pawn c4, English opening, and I usually play e6 in this position, but I played e5, going for maybe a small surprise, something a bit different. He played a3, which was on my computer last night. I did check his repertoire. He's capable of playing a lot of things, not just English, a lot of d4 openings and ready lines. But I saw in the past when he does play the English, he has played this move at least a few times in previous tournament play. So I play knight f6, he plays knight c3, I play knight c6, and he plays d3. So he's basically playing a reverse Sicilian, maybe attempting to transpose into a reverse version of a classical Sicilian or Najdorf or Dragon. And going forward here, I played pawn g6, he played pawn g3, and I played pawn to d5. So essentially going for a reverse open Sicilian. So even though I'm black, I'm pretending to be white, and even though he's white, he's pretending to be black. And the funny thing about the opening position is I had pretty much the exact same thing in the previous round, but I was white. If you saw my round 4 recap, this was my game against Ravi Kavlashvili. And it was very, very, very similar, except I'm down a tempo because I'm black. So that does change a few things about the opening strategy, and there are some tactical nuances. After bishop g2, my knight is attacked, I defend it. And after knight f3, it's a little bit different from my game against Ravi Kavlashvili because white is already threatening knight g5, and I've not committed to bishop g7. In the game against Ravi, my bishop was already on g7, and he played this early bishop d2 to reinforce the knight on c3. So in this position, I thought I had to spend the time to prevent knight g5, and I play pawn h6. And then he plays bishop d2. I play bishop g7, and it's still very similar to my game against Ravi. If we just go and check out what happened in the previous round, we got this position, and yeah, compare it to this position. It's still very, very similar. And okay, it's white's move here, and I don't have my knight in the center yet to try and create tactics. So he played a very natural move, rook c1, putting the rook on the half-open file. And this is already beginning to branch away from my game against Ravi because in that game, he put his rook on the b file, a little bit more passive. But there's still a lot of similarities because after rook c1, I hop in with my knight, knight d4, and maybe trying to generate some tactics with this juicy looking b3 square. If I don't have my knight on d5, there would be some tactics with bishop to b3. So in this position, he plays a move knight to a4, which does have the plan of knight c5. And it is one of white's more active ideas here. Interestingly enough, Ravi also played a similar plan in our game. But in this position, I took a pretty long thing. I think I took about 10 minutes on the next move. I spent a few minutes calculating a pretty crazy line, knight f4. I was also calculating knight e3, where if takes bishop b3, trapping the queen. I didn't go for this because white can take, and get 3 minor pieces for the queen. So I thought this is just one way for white to probably be for choice. But knight f4 was also super interesting with the idea that I'm attacking the bishop and I'm threatening bishop b3. And if white takes the knight with a pawn, I think bishop b3 is winning for black because after takes, white's not getting the 3 minors. I'm attacking this knight, also attacking this knight. So black should be better here. The reason why I rejected knight f4 was bishop takes f4. And I couldn't quite see a clear path forward. The lines just seemed very murky after bishop b3 and queen d2. And then I can take the knight or the bishop or the knight. But I thought that the position is unstable in lines where like the bishop opens up and my queen side is a bit vulnerable. So I didn't go for it. I played a more positional and prophylactic move here, pawn to b6. And this is a move that I think I should have played in my previous round. It would have been pawn b3. But yeah, in this game, I think I learned my lesson from the structure of the previous game. And this is a very useful move in preventing the knights from coming in to c5. And even though it does look like it's weakening the diagonal, it's not easy for white to exploit any sort of tactics along this diagonal. So going forward, white castled. I castle, and then he takes on d4. And after pawn takes d4, I thought this was an opening success. This is one of the goals of my opening strategy when I play knight d4 is to have the trade where now the pawn gives me more space and the e-file is half open. So I have ideas of rook e8 and bishop g4, and e2 pawn is a little bit backwards. On top of that, I think I just have better piece harmony too. My pieces are super solid. The knight seems a little bit misplaced on a4. And going forward, my opponent did try to make some progress on the queen side. He played pawn b4. I respond with rook c8, so getting my rook off the diagonal and just trying to get ready to play pawn c6. He played knight b2. I played queen d7. He played rook e1, and I played rook to e8. So just trying to achieve the optimal setup. Black's pieces are looking quite pretty, and yeah, I thought I should be slightly better here. Now in this position, he played queen to a4, so offering a queen trade. And I didn't really want to trade queens here because I thought there's some potential to attack on the king side. So I play c6, obstructing the diagonal, also defending my pawn on a7. And then he played an interesting move here, knight d1, which came as a bit of a surprise. But the idea for white is to move the e-pawn and then anticipate the trade on e3, where the knight can activate and basically redevelop into the center. And I saw this coming, but I figured that it's not easy to prevent. So I kept improving my position, played pawn h5. And as expected, he played pawn e4. And then I had a decision to make. Do I take en passant, or do I leave my pawn on d4 and retreat my knight either to f6 or e7? And I thought from a positional standpoint, it makes sense to take en passant because I'm opening the d-file and the d3 pawn is now going to be a long-term target. And after he takes back on e3, I had another decision to make. Do I trade on e3 or do I keep my knight on the board? I chose to retreat my knight to e7, unleashing the queen against e3. In hindsight, maybe I should have taken. This would have simplified the position a little bit. I wasn't sure after bishop takes e3, where if I take on d3, he takes on c6, and then a7 is a potential weakness. So I thought with my knight on e7, I'm keeping the pressure while also keeping my queenside pawns defended. Now going forward here, he played, I think, what is a pretty strong positional move, bishop c3, attempting to trade off what was his passive bishop for my very solid bishop on g7. And it's hard to avoid this trade. I didn't really want to play bishop h6, giving him the long diagonal. So I played rook c7, allowing the trade of bishops. After takes, queen c2. I put my queen on d4. So nice central square, ensuring that he's not getting his queen immediately to the long diagonal. But he plays knight c4, so improving his knight. I play rook d8, pressuring the d-file, attacking the pawn. He further improves his knight with knight e5, defending d3. And here I I took some time. My c-pawn is a target, so I decided to play pawn c5, getting my pawn off the target of the bishop, knight, and queen rook battery. And I thought this was a nice move, just leaving his bishop staring into empty space along the long diagonal. But the game keeps going. He plays rook e4, attacking my queen. I drop it back to d6. He plays queen b2, setting up some nasty discoveries. I move my king back to g8, and he plays rook ce1. So he's trying to optimize the setup of his pieces, also creating some pressure on the e-file. And now I do have to be careful. If I move my knight, let's say knight f5 looks like a very natural move, eyeing the d4 square, white would have the tactic here, knight takes g6, and my f7 pawn is overworked. Takes and then takes would be very, very good for white. So yeah, rook e1 is basically a way to try and tie down my knight to defending g6. And here I took a lot of time. There were a few moves I was considering. I think the move I wanted to play was bishop d5 to try and trade off bishops. I didn't go for this because knight c4 felt a little bit uncomfortable, counterattacking my queen, also unleashing the rook battery. And if I drop back my queen, there's rook takes e7. So I figured that if this line were to happen, I would take. But this still felt really uncomfortable because my knight is pinned to the back rank. If I move my knight, I'm pretty much getting mated. Rook e8, king h7, queen h8, checkmate. So long story short, I did not want him to have knight c4 as a resource, and I played a prophylactic move here, pawn to b5. And even though this looks a little bit strange, where I'm not having my pawn chain anymore, I thought my pawn is more useful, just preventing his knight from having the square. And going forward, he told me after the game he wasn't sure what to do here, so he played somewhat of a waiting move, pawn h3, maybe having some future ideas of playing pawn g4. And now the ball is back in my court. I decide to take on b4. He takes back, and I put my rook on c8, creating the battery on the newly opened c-file. And now I'm dreaming of ideas of rook c2 to harass his queen, but also maybe target the pawn on f2. So here he replies with queen d2, looking to maybe slide into my king side, which I did not want. So I put my king back on g7. And when I played this move, I thought maybe the game could end in repetition, where if he moves back to b2, I move back to g8. But then I realized, as he was thinking in this position, if he plays queen b2, I would have rook c2, and then I'm probably better because his queen can't easily stay on the long diagonal. If queen a1, rook a2. So he didn't play queen b2. He dropped his knight back to f3, unleashing the rook battery, maybe looking to reroute to g5 to pressure my bishop. So I respond with bishop d5. He plays rook f4. And in this position, I played what I thought was a good move in the moment, but I just didn't have a sense of danger here. I played the move knight f5, thinking that it looks solid. My setup looks very healthy. After knight f5, I want to play rook c2, and there's no queen e3. The queen would have to drop back to d1. And before I played this move, I had calculated rook takes f5, pawn takes f5, queen g5, queen g6. And I thought that the sacrifice shouldn't work. My king should be safe. But to my dismay, he went for the sack. And after takes, he doesn't play queen g5 immediately. He plays knight h4. And at this point, I really regretted my decision to play knight f5, because now there are big issues for black with the queen coming in. Obviously, knight takes f5 is a massive threat to fork my king and queen. And there's not too many defensive resources here. The other benefit to knight g4 is he's covering g6, so I don't have the resource queen g6 to block the eventual check. So I tried to defend. I played bishop e6. He went in with his queen. I walk my king back, but he invades queen f6, now threatening ideas of knight g6. I tried to run with my king. He takes on f5, exploiting the pin, actually the double pin of the bishop, attacking my queen. I take on b4, counterattacking his rook. At this point, I'm falling pretty low on time. He's also low on time, but not as low as me. And he keeps initiative, plays rook e4, attacking my queen. Yeah, at this point, a lot of things are going wrong in my position. King is very, very shaky on e8. I tried to offer the queen trade with queen c3, but here he has a forcing sequence, knight g7. If I play king f8, there's knight takes e6 with the pork, the pin, and the fork. And after what I played, king d7, he plays rook d4, and I had to give away my queen. Oh no, my queen. And now the position is completely losing for black. I tried to fight on, because why not? Queen b4, rook c5. I'm pinned. I played a5, so saving the rook after takes check, king h2, rook 8 c2, trying to go for any last shot at counterplay, but his conversion was very smooth. He gives a check, king d7, d5, basically trapping my bishop. I take the pawn with the hope that if he takes back, I can check here in rook c2. Maybe there's some small annoyance for white, but he didn't allow this line. After bishop takes d5, he played queen d3, pinning my bishop, and the game ended after just a few more moves, knight f5 check, and I resigned. So pretty tough game. I felt like it was a good opening success. I felt very comfortable in the middle game, but at some point things shifted in my opponent's favor. I think my big mistake this game was knight f5. Not being aware of the danger in the position. I have not had a chance yet to check with the engine. I think I'll go ahead and just check real quick what the valuation was in this position. Can show it here. Yeah, the position is equal here. Knight f5, I assume, is a losing blunder. Yeah, just allowing rook takes f5. What I should have done was just trade off my bishop. Let's say takes, and then rook c2. Yeah, this would have been a bit more solid. And here the sack doesn't work. And this probably would have led to some simplification. Going back further, I am curious, did I have a chance to be better? Maybe the position was slightly better for black. I'm really curious around here. So en passant was the best move. Engine likes b5, which I was aware of as a resource. I didn't want to commit the pawn to b5. If queen a6, knight b6. Ah. And the pawn's not that bad. And then d3 is a target. Yeah, maybe I should have considered this more seriously. Anyway, yeah, tough game. Always tough to have a loss where I could have been clearly better, but definitely some lessons to take away. And yeah, I hope you guys are learning something from my games. As usual, if you have any questions, leave them below. Stay tuned for more recaps, and I'll see you guys soon.